So today we're going to be looking at a scenario where the Balkans form an empire in 2022. Now this video is going to be extremely controversial because no one from this region can agree on anything, and I'm bound to get hateful comments. So just realize that this video is for fun. The Balkans are going to be forming one empire, and they're going to be buffed, so just keep that in mind throughout this video. Now you might have noticed that I've gotten some new lighting for the videos, and honestly my room looks like a recording studio now, which is kind of the goal. I got my soundproofing behind the monitors. I got two lights, one smaller than the other, but it still works fine. And yeah, it just looks like a recording studio when you walk in. I guess that's a good thing. Also, just real quick, if you don't want to hear this, you can go ahead and skip ahead, but I'm going to be talking about the channel for 2022. Last year, we set records for the channel, obviously, because that's when the channel took off. And it only took about half a year, and we've gotten like 20,000 subscribers in 6 months, which is crazy for me. And looking at 2022, I'm really hoping we can keep up with that growth and keep growing together. So my goals for 2022 are written on my whiteboard over there, and I'm going for 50,000 subscribers and 10 million total views. Now that might be crazy. I don't know. Social Blitz says we can hit 100,000 this year. Maybe we can. I don't know. I'm not saying that we won't. I'm not saying that we will, but we're just gonna have to play it out and see. But I think 50,000 subscribers is totally plausible. We're already like halfway there. So I think that's possible. And if you guys want to help me reach my goals, then make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that cool stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and get right into the video. Now everyone's definition of the Balkans is a little bit different. I would define the Balkans as all of the former Yugoslavian states, Albania, and maybe Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece. So I know right here, this is definitely the Balkans. There's no denying that in any way. But I'm going to go ahead and add in Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece just because I'll make the video a lot more interesting. And there we go. So now we have all of the Balkans united under one empire. Now this empire is very unstable if it were to happen in real life, but this is fictional, so in this scenario, it's going to be just fine. So this country just formed up in Southern Europe, and it's pretty powerful. It's definitely a power in the region, but it may not be the strongest compared to countries like Turkey and France and stuff like that. So they're going to be buffed up, and they're going to be able to take on these other countries. The first country that this new empire goes after is Moldova. Now Moldova is pretty mountainous, but that is really no problem for the Balkans because they have their own mountains over here. So they're going to be just fine. And in the peace treaty, we see that Moldova is fully annexed by the southern Balkan Empire. The next country that this Balkan Empire goes after is Hungary. The Balkans push in on all fronts and eventually look like they're going to capture Budapest. But luckily for Hungary, they are going to have an ally in this war, and that is Poland. And with that, we see a coalition being formed against the Balkan countries here, with countries like Turkey joining in. Now, this is a really iconic duo right here, the Balkans and Turkey. What could go wrong, you know? They just love each other so much, so I really don't see what would go wrong. Anyway, we have Armenia joining in on the side of the Balkans, and Azerbaijan joining in on Turkey's side. We also have Cyprus joining in on the side of the Balkans, and it is here that we see this war greatly escalate. So in order for Poland to help out their friend Hungary, they're going to have to move through Slovakia, and Slovakia doesn't really let them do that, which leads Slovakia being dragged into the war and invaded by Poland. We see Polish troops push in and eventually capitulate the country. We then see Italy join the war in order to get some coastline off the Balkans, because in this scenario it looks like the Balkans are pretty screwed. But what they didn't see happening was France joining the side of the Balkans in order to keep order in Europe and kind of get some coast off of Italy. Now NATO, the EU, and the UN don't exist in this universe. As for a lot of my videos, those organizations and alliances don't really make the video interesting because it would just be like a pile of countries declaring war on one country. So I just like to abolish them for my videos to make it more interesting. So with this, we have a pretty big war going on here in the Balkans, not only in the Balkans, but across all of Europe. Over in the Caucasus, we see Azerbaijan and Turkey wipe out Armenia. And back in Hungary, we see the Balkans capture Budapest. Over on the Italian border with France, we see French troops push across the border and into Italian territory, but they do have some troubles here pushing through because this area is mountain heavy. We see the Italian Navy take over all of Corsica and start a slight push into Slovenia and Croatia. Back in Hungary, we see the country capitulate as Polish troops are now just arriving to the Slovakian-Hungarian border. It is from here that we see fighting between the two countries take place, and this is where the real war starts. Back down in the east, we have Turkey pushing in from northern Cyprus and taking the rest of the country, and from here they start to move their troops west in order to invade Greece and Bulgaria. While this is happening though, we have France continuing to push into the mountainous parts of Italy, doing so pretty successfully. This is mostly because the Italian army is poorly equipped and not really prepared for war, just like how they were in World War II, pun intended. During this time, we also see the Balkans push Italy back to their border. Up north though, we do see Polish troops start to push into Hungary and down towards Budapest, but this is eventually stopped as a defensive line is set up by the Balkans. Down south, we have Turkey pushing into Greece and Bulgaria, but doing so very slightly because the Balkans have set up a defense down here. So the Balkans are in a bit of a bad situation here. They have to fight 3 different fronts over in Italy, Hungary, and down here in Turkey, but like I said, they're buffed for this video, so they're going to be able to do so just fine. They also have the help of France, which is pretty good, so they might be set. Speaking of France and the Balkans, they push across and eventually meet up over here in northern Italy. From here, this two starts to move down into southern Italy until eventually they meet the border of San Marino, and at the exact time, we have Italy surrendering. So from here, we have France actually continuing to help out the Balkans in the war. Now, they have no reason to do this. They were only at war with Italy, but why not help out the Balkans and take out Poland and Turkey? Because, you know, that would kind of increase your influence and it would also give you an ally. So as French troops arrive over here to the stalemate in Hungary, we see the red team push back the blue team. Eventually, they're pushed all the way back to the Slovakian border, and eventually they take over all of Slovakia, which brings the country back into the war. From here, red team troops continue to push up until another stalemate is formed, and down south, we see Turkey making even more progress, now pushing into Romania. Eventually, Poland sees no point in fighting this war and signs a peace treaty with the red team. In this peace treaty, we see Poland cede a little bit of land over to Slovakia in order to kind of make up for them invading their territory. Now the Balkans can focus on their main front down here with Turkey, which is getting a little bit out of hand. Luckily for them though, we see reinforcements arrive and the red team starts to push back Turkey. They do so pretty well and they push all the way back to the European part of Turkey, in which they then take and capture Istanbul, prompting the renaming of the city to Constantinople. Now this is seen as a really big embarrassment for Turkey because they just lost their one city that they are kind of like, I guess, bragging about or proud of. I don't know, I'm not Turkish, but they just lost Istanbul and it's been renamed to Constantinople, which isn't good for them. So after losing some more battles and eventually losing their coast, we see Turkey sign peace with Team Balkan. In said peace treaty, we see the Balkans gain a little bit of land off of Turkey, and Cyprus and Armenia are both released. And now it's time to look at the peace treaty with Hungary and Italy. So taking a look at the peace treaty over here in Central Europe, we have Italy getting pretty screwed over here. They lose all of their northern territory and lose Sardinia over to France. As for Hungary, they're completely erased from humanity and are split between Slovakia and Hungary, with Slovakia getting a little bit of northern Hungarian lands. From here, we see Slovakia become a protectorate state of the Balkans, and France and the Balkans both become allies. And with this, the Balkans have a lot of control over Southern Europe and Europe as a whole. Although, when looking at expansion, they haven't really done that much other than take a little bit of land from Turkey and a little bit of land from Italy, as well as annexing Hungary and Moldova. So from here, they're going to do something pretty interesting. The Balkans signed a pact with Russia in order to invade Ukraine. From here, we see Balkan troops push into the outskirts of Ukraine, and Russian troops push into the outskirts of the other side of Ukraine. Now, this is seen as a pretty swift fall as Ukraine had all of their fences on the Russian border. Eventually, Russian troops push over and capture Kiev, which leads to the surrender of Ukraine. Now, I know Ukraine has a big river splitting it in half, and I'm pretty sure it's right here, but I'm too lazy to look up a geography map, so this is what we're going with. Ukraine is being split in half between the Balkans and Russia. So taking a look at the peace treaty, Ukraine is split between Russia and the Balkans. So from here, the Balkans really can't expand into Europe much. They have Belarus, but that's protected by Russia. They really wouldn't want to go to war with Poland again because it would just be a repeat of the First Balkan War. The First Balkan War in this timeline, this would be like the 5th or 6th one. They could take over Austria, but that might prompt Germany to join in, and that would just be a mess to deal with. And they probably don't want to go to war with Turkey again because that would take forever, and Turkey probably has a pretty strong defense set up along this border. So the Balkans really only have two options, which are Italy or Africa. The first thing they do is send an ultimatum over to Italy. Basically, what they want to do is take over some ports and some land along the Adriatic Sea. And surprisingly enough, Italy accepts this ultimatum and cedes some lands over to the Balkans. From here, we see the Balkans set their eyes down to Africa, and specifically Libya. Now, the Balkan Navy isn't necessarily the greatest, but it's not the worst, so they might be able to pull off a military landing here. After stationing their military in Crete over here, they begin the journey across the Mediterranean, which is a pretty rough one. After the declaration of war is sent, we see Balkan troops landing over here in Libya. To be specific, there is 4 landing spots. The strongest of the 2 are up here in the northern Libyan lands, and the weaker ones are over here on the eastern coast. So at first, these 2 landings do pretty well and start to push into Libyan territory. The first 2 meet up and eventually create a broader front, but down here we see these 2 fronts struggling, and eventually the smaller one is wiped out and the other one is starting to be pushed north. Now this really isn't good for Libya here, because if this front right here meets this front, they're going to have an even broader front and even more supplies. So it becomes Libya's main goal to cut off this from the rest, which kind of proves to be a mistake for Libya here because they leave their other front kind of open and the Balkan troops start to push in. So much so that they start to encircle the Libyan army that is trying to cut off this from the rest. In addition to that, the other front manages to meet up with the main front, which is an even greater loss for Libya. Fortunately for them though, during the time of the encirclement, we do see Balkan troops being pushed back up north, but this is eventually stopped as a defense line is set up. Eventually the encirclement is wiped out, and Balkan troops secure the eastern coast. From here they start to push down the coast, mainly avoiding the Libyan desert. There is a pretty good defensive line set up here, but it isn't really as important as the main army pushing over here towards Tripoli. Win after win, the Balkans are doing very good down here in Libya as they've trained up their armies since the last wars, and they've gained a lot of experience. Eventually, after pushing up the coast, they eventually captured Tripoli, and the rest west of the Libyan coast. This then leads to a slight push into the Libyan desert, but this really isn't seen as efficient, and eventually we see Libya surrender. In the peace treaty here, we have the Balkans taking over a large portion of northern Libya, which kind of leaves the rest to be a puppet. And with that, we see the Balkan Empire at its height, and let's go ahead and end this video by taking a look at some Balkan states. So taking a look at the puppets of this empire, we have a lot to go over here, but really it's not that much, and it's not that different from the normal Balkans. We have all the core countries staying the same, and some of them even expanding. For example, here we have Greece expanding over here into Turkey and forming a border with a Turkish state over here. Up north, we see Romania take a lot of land out of Hungary and Ukraine, as well as annexing all of Moldova. Croatia, Slovenia, and Serbia all take land out of Hungary, which kind of leaves this like little slither of a Hungarian state left. We see Slovenia expand over into Italy, and the rest becomes an Italian state. Down in Libya, we see two main Libyan states and a Libyan puppet. And with that, we conclude the video where the Balkans form an empire in 2022. Now, like I said in the beginning, the goals are set for this year. They seem reachable, but I'm not sure. We'll see if we can reach them. And if you want to help me reach those goals, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That really helps me out. Also, 25,000 subscriber special, that's coming up soon. It's not a video, it's something else, but you guys will see when we get there. I'm really excited to release it. And yeah, I'm just excited for that. So if you want to see that happen sooner, once again, make sure to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.